Good morning, I'm Rose Lee. As Florida's population continues to increase, so does the access to health care for older adults with chronic conditions. And Florida has seen the highest amount of new businesses in the nation. And Meet a Florida State University graduate, published author of 300 stories and 22 novels, here to introduce his new experimental fiction. And did you know the #1 cause of death in women in the U.S. is heart disease? All this when we return. Florida continues to be one of the most desirable states in terms of weather, to move from the north or actually from all over the U.S. map. Florida maintains a strong daily average of population growth throughout the last couple of decades. And not to mention, the tax climate for Florida property owners is great too. Florida residents pay no state income tax or state estate tax. And each year, Florida homeowners receive homestead exemption. And that's up to about $50,000 on primary residence. And who doesn't want to save money on their property taxes? Florida's population growth from transient Americans is also seeing growth, and new business owners who bring their brand of business into our communities. According to a recent U.S. Census Bureau figures, the latest business formation of numbers show Florida accounts for 11.7% out of the U.S.'s 5.8 million new application for businesses. That's from January 2021 to January 2022. That's 683,680 new Florida businesses. And that is a positive sign for economic recovery that illustrates how unpredictable incidences like COVID challenges have been turned into opportunities for future business growth. One family-owned small business packed up and moved south to Sarasota, Florida. The Natural Apothecary Shop is focused on health and wellness. With their New Jersey roots, they ship to clients all over the United States. Lori Lombardi and her pharmacist husband, Eric Sauer, moved to begin a new chapter in their life in Florida. Their unique brand combines their professional skills and passion for natural apothecary. Lori is so grateful for her incredible career as a highly recognized celebrity makeup artist, to the stars and well-known artists, to beauty fashion magazine writers. Lori was also a recipient of Primetime Emmy Awards from the Academy of Television of Arts and Sciences. Lori, give us an understanding of your background before your move to Florida.
25 years ago, I started as a makeup artist in New York City. I was a makeup artist at NBC, did shows like SNL for 12 years, David Letterman, where I picked up 2 Emmy Awards in 2003 and 2004 for Outstanding Achievement in Makeup, which was really wonderful.
Lori, how did you transition from professional makeup artist to creating your own organic skincare line?
I also have a clinical nutrition degree, and so about 10 years ago, I decided, I'm going to combine both of these skills, and I formulated an organic skincare line, which I sold, which still sells up north.
So tell us, what made you move your business to Florida?
I've been visiting Sarasota for about 3 years now and fell in love with the city. Just love Florida in general, but I love the West Coast and the people. It's very cultured here, and I really didn't see anything like us around here. So I decided, well, this looks like a great place to open up an apothecary shop. I formulate all the skincare on the premises here, and people have been coming in, getting samples, and still doing a lot of shipping.
According to the National Institute of Health, National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health, naturopathic medicine is a medical system that is evolved from a combination of traditional practices and healthcare approaches popular in the 19th century Europe. Eric Sauer is a naturopathic consultant and licensed pharmacist. His work with enzymes have helped people increase their quality of life for over 20 years. Naturopathic medicine is a system that uses natural remedies to help the body heal itself. How do homeopathic products address a specific health problem?
Homeopathy is a wonderful thing, and it's no milligrams at all. And the key thing about homeopathy is we can work with symptoms, and it does not interact with any medications, and that's a key thing. And as a pharmacist, I'm able to see the medications that people take and what they need to take care of some of the symptoms. For instance, bronchi-HP. All right, bronchi-HP, of course, for bronchioles, for those who have that deep cough and asthmatics and all that, it really, really relaxes the bronchioles. And key thing is no side effects. Either homeopathic remedies work or they don't work. And if they don't work, we switch it to other things and we get the right mix. So as a pharmacist, I'm able to talk about interactions with medications, but I'm also can bring them into the homeopathic world. Okay, and it's very safe and very effective.
Eric, as a pharmacist, share your process to how you follow a patient's information during a consultation, then help address their healthcare issues and nutritional needs.
This is why I do all the consultations, either by phone, FaceTime, and if you're in the Sarasota area, we can do one-on-one. And when we do the consultations, I kind of get the history of what's going on with that person and symptoms and issues that they're dealing with. And as a pharmacist too, I get to read and learn about their medications to do drug-to-drug interactions, also drug depletions, which is very important. So here we do not treat, we do not prescribe, and we do not diagnose. We balance. We balance the immune system, which I feel is the most important thing. I get to reevaluate what's going on in your life, emotionally and physically, and we try to balance it out and get to a better level of homeostasis, which is a balancing of health.
Tell us about some of the vitamins with enzymes that you formulate to address your clients' needs.
These are all my enzymes that I've formulated through the years, from vitamins to Excel, which is for energy, digesting enzymes for digestion, and protease is the antioxidant. So in my practice, I use a lot of enzymes to help balance out the immune system. And as you know, the immune system is the gut related to the enzymes in the body, and that's the importance of the enzymes.
Lori, where can we learn more about Natural Apothecary Shop's organic skincare line and homeopathic line of enzymes and herbs?
Visit us at naturalapothecaryshop.com, and we'll see you soon.
Most people are not aware that lives are being lost each year due to racial, ethnic, and gender in healthcare. According to the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, heart disease is the #1 cause of death in women in the United States, with African American women having an even higher risk of dying from heart disease at a younger age than white women. Here to create awareness of those health inequities and explain what we can do to stop the rise of deaths from cardiovascular disease is Selena Correa, Chief Executive Officer of Women Heart, along with heart attack and stroke survivor Shanta Quillette. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Selena, COVID-19 pandemic was an eye-opener for all of us throughout the world to take on a healthier lifestyle. As a global health expert with over 15 years of experience, why are we seeing the rise in the number of deaths from heart disease and stroke, especially among certain groups?
Now, I think it's really important for your listeners to know that cardiovascular disease, or CVD, which includes heart disease and stroke, is the leading cause of death in this country. It affects nearly 1 in 4 people. And on top of that, almost half of us have some form of CVD. Now, as you mentioned, certain communities are at higher risk for CVD. And in addition to that, they may also experience disparities in their health care, which further exacerbates the problem and makes their health outcomes even worse. In addition to diet and exercise and sleep, other factors like where you live, what your level of education is, and what your level of income is may also impact your health.
Chantaquillette, tell us about what led to your diagnosis of cardiovascular disease, and how's life after learning you have cardiovascular disease?
Absolutely. So it goes back to 2012. I never seen myself as someone to have heart disease or to even have a heart attack or stroke. In 2012, I was running on a treadmill, started having heart palpitations. I was going back and forth to the doctor. Hence, I said 2012. There was not a diagnosis until 2019, until I had my stroke. And how I'm living with it now, definitely it pulled me up by my lapels, and I started living my life differently. You definitely have to face your mortality at that time. And so I started living my best life and started making changes that were necessary so I could live a productive and healthy life, and I could be here for my children. So now, I'm living a healthy lifestyle and making sure those around me are doing the same.
Why is it so common for cardiovascular disease to be missed or misdiagnosed in women and people of color in the U.S.?
In fact, it's a really big issue that my organization, Women Heart, is really fighting. Misdiagnosis and delayed diagnosis, in particular in women, is a significant issue, and we are trying to do what we can to make sure that that is not happening, whether that's in the ER or in doctors' offices. It's a really big priority. But what that also tells me is that we need to really enable patients and people across the U.S. to take ownership of their health. And that means prioritizing it alongside work and family, making sure that they've got a good relationship with their doctor, making sure that if they don't have a doctor, because some people don't have doctors, they've got their medical records in hand. And also, in particular, this is really critical for CVD, making sure they know their numbers, whether that is their blood pressure or their cholesterol. These things are really powerful tools to help them advocate for themselves in the healthcare setting.
Chantaquillette, what do you want others to know from your life-changing experience?
Doctors, they are doctors, but sometimes they do make mistakes, and I just want people to know if one doctor doesn't tell you what you want to hear, then you go to another doctor. And some people have this notion that if I go to the doctor is not going to say anything is wrong, or a lot of people are scared to go to the hospital. And what I say is go anyway. The worst that can happen is nothing happens. But if you don't go to the hospital, then you might end up in a casket, and we don't want that to happen.
Selena, what can we do to take care of our heart health and take on a proactive approach to help ourselves and others as heart health advocates?
I think it's time to bring your heart health up front, knowing that it's the #1 killer of men and women. That's really important. And as we've said before, going back to the doctor, and Chantaquillette said it, even if you're afraid, do it anyway. That's really important. And again, I will emphasize, know your numbers. As you said, a lot of people don't know what their blood pressure is, and that is the #1 way for you to assess how healthy your heart is.
Thank you, ladies, for joining us to help us better understand and manage risks of cardiovascular disease and the importance of advocating for ourselves and the people that we love.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen Graham Jones is the New York Times bestselling author of My Heart is a Chainsaw, The Only Good Indians and Mongrels, among others. He is the recipient of the Mark Twain American Voice in Literature Award, the LA Times Ray Bradbury Prize for Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Speculative Fiction, among many other awards. Jones is a Blackfoot Native American Indian. Born in Texas, earned a bachelor's from Texas Tech University, his MA in English from the University of North Texas, and his PhD from Florida State University. He is a published author of 300 short stories and 22 novels, and he joins us this morning to share his newest short story, The Backbone of the World, an experimental fiction. Good morning, Stephen.
Good morning.
Stephen, as an author, you write horror fiction, crime fiction, science fiction, and your newest short story, The Backbone of the World, is experimental fiction. Tell us about this story and how is it experimental?
You know, the story is Millie Two Bears. She's living alone up on the Blackfeet Reservation where she grew up. And she's not in the town. She's not in Browning. She's living out in the fields and the pastures. And prairie dogs start to encroach upon her property, or her husband's property. He's not around anymore. He's locked up in prison. And she feels like she has to protect her property. And she has to navigate kind of the expectations of the world of Native people is that we're stewards of the trees. You know, we pet the nice wolves and we make sure sunlight gets to all the right bushes and all that stuff. The world wants us to be eco-warriors, and we ourselves know that that's not necessarily our job, our duty, but nevertheless, we understand that stereotypes being laid on top of us. And so Millie Two Bears, in going to war against the prairie dogs and trying like lethal means to eradicate this prairie dog colony, feels like she is failing in that regard. As for The Backbone of the World's experimental nature, I think if it's doing any experimenting, I think it's experimenting with content, with mixing science fiction and horror and something else probably together, all in the same pot, and just stirring it up.
Blackfoot Native American Indian history goes back to the 1730s, when French fur traders observed indigenous people's blackened bottom of their moccasins after they walked through a prairie fire. Fast forward now, how do you use Blackfoot Native American culture in your writings?
You know, I never think of it as something like I pour in. It's just I am Blackfeet, so everything I write comes from that place. And I can write a story like Mongrels, say this werewolf novel I did, 6 years ago. It never once says Blackfeet, nor Native, nor American Indian, Native American, none of that stuff. But nevertheless, it feels distinctly Native to me. It feels specifically Blackfeet to me. So yeah, it's not like I don't write a story and then sprinkle Blackfeet on it. You know, it's like Blackfeet is there it's like coming up through my fingertips when I write.
So it's inherent in your writing.
It is, yes. You know, I had what'd you call it, like an awakening moment in grad school in 95 at North Texas. I turned in a story to workshop, and one of the characters got in a discussion with someone, and that person asked them, you know, what tribe are you? And they said Blackfeet or whatever they said. And I came to class to workshop that, and people were positioning themselves to the story differently. Like they were, like, I don't know, adopting like a sacred tone, or their handle with care gloves, you know? And I was like, what's different? And they said, well, this is a Native character. And I was like, they've all been Native characters. I just don't always talk about it, you know? And yeah, so for me, that's, if I have a project, that's one of my projects. I want to change things such that Native can be the default setting instead of the aberration.
Give us some background on your newest short story, The Backbone of the World, and where it takes place, and the fight to preserve her land from takeover of prairie dogs who are like rodents burrowing in the ground close to her home. Why is the main character, Millie Two Bears, who lives alone and considers herself a bad Indian?
Yeah, it's because she is coming after these prairie dogs. Like she knows the world expects her to coddle these prairie dogs, but all the same, she has land, she has property, and she doesn't want it riddled with holes from prairie dogs. And so she's trying different means that she kind of cooks up herself to either chase these prairie dogs off or kill the prairie dogs. And it really quickly becomes kill the prairie dogs because they're so persistent they won't leave her land alone. They're definitely moving closer and closer to her trailer. As far as like the theme of the anthology Trespass goes, they've crossed the border from their land to her land, and they're steadily moving in and in and in.
As an author of 300 short stories and 22 novels, and a professor at the University of Colorado Boulder, you work as an author and educator, and you have touched so many lives. What do you envision as your next step in your career?
All media is, like novels or sculptures or songs or dance or whatever. It's an artist, a person having a thought or a feeling, and they encode it in this work, in this sculpture, in this novel. And then the reader, the audience comes along and they try to decode that media such that they can have some version of the same thought or feeling. And I really love that process of sharing my thoughts and feelings with the world. So I'm just always looking for more and more outlets to let me do that.
That's awesome. The Backbone of the World is a part of the Trespass collection. How did the collection come about, and where can our viewers find the collection?
You can find it on Amazon.com in both audio format and digital, for your e-readers. And I had Charlotte Flight do the voice acting for The Backbone of the World, and she just knocks it out of the park. It is such a good reading, such a good performance, I guess I should say. And as for where The Backbone of the World comes from for me, I spend a lot of time up here in Boulder, Colorado, out on my mountain bike, and sometimes I'll spend a whole day where the only people I talk to are prairie dogs, because there's prairie dogs everywhere. I'm always cruising through a prairie dog town and, trying to be careful because them dudes don't care if you run over them. Well, I think they care, but they don't understand bikes and direction and all that stuff. So you have to be careful not to run over them. But I spend a lot of time with prairie dogs. And so when Jeff Vandermeer called me up, I don't know how the big snowball got rolling of this anthology. All I know is that Jeff called me up or emailed me or something and said, "Hey man, Trespass, are you in?" And because it was Jeff, I said yes. I've worked with Jeff a few times before. I know he's trustworthy. I know he does really good work, and he wouldn't be involved if it wasn't quality. So I jumped right in and wrote the story the next afternoon.
Thank you, Stephen, for joining us to share your newest experimental fiction, The Backbone of the World. Much success to you as you continue to write more novels for your readers to enjoy.
It was wonderful talking to you. Thank you very much.
A new report by Consumer Affairs reveals Florida's growing aging population is 21%, the highest in the U.S. And a survey from Pew Research Center revealed the use of technology in adults in 2021 found 96% of adults ages 50 to 64 use the internet, compared with 75% of those 65 and older. So technology can affect the access of medical care, which is still an issue for many older Americans who are unfamiliar with technology. Joining us to discuss how older adults are getting the care they need is Senior Medical Director with WellMed, part of Optum, Dr. Preeti Pathaja. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So, Doctor, why is it so important for older Americans to have access to healthcare options to achieve better healthcare outcomes?
Well, it's really been shown that poor access to care leads to poor health outcomes. The reality is that patients need to be able to see their doctor for management of chronic conditions and early diagnosis of other conditions that might exist. And that's the only way to improve healthcare outcomes, is to improve access to care.
What are the latest methods in healthcare that allow medical practitioners to provide better healthcare access? And how do they work?
So one of the great things that we've seen, particularly in the last few years since the outset of COVID, where really it became more of a necessity, is the telemedicine option. So what we saw during COVID, or when the pandemic started, was that many folks were hesitant to leave their homes. And so we saw better adoption of the telemedicine option. However, what we saw was that older Americans either didn't have the equipment to engage in a telemedicine visit, or maybe they didn't feel comfortable using the technology to engage in a telemedicine visit. So that's where we had to get creative in terms of our solution.
How do you reach out to those older patients who have chronic conditions and are not tech savvy? Do you send them a letter, or will your provider call the patient?
Right. So what we did was we developed what we call the WellMed Tablet Connect program. And what it is it's a sanitized handheld tablet that's delivered to the patient home. And at the time of the visit, the provider calls the patient, and all the patient has to do is just click on a button to answer the call. And then they are connected with their physician for a telemedicine visit. So it's a really simple solution that gets around those barriers of those patients that either don't have the technology or the know-how to engage in a telemedicine visit.
Are you having success in patients signing up for this program?
We've actually already engaged in 230,000 telemedicine visits using this Tablet Connect program. And for those patients that qualify, let's say, for example, those patients with, let's say, diabetes or heart disease or some other serious medical condition, in those cases, what we do is we actually leave the tablet with the patient, so they are able to engage in those more frequent visits with their physician.
That's like an insurance policy for patients who need more attention and have quicker access to their doctor by getting back on the tablet to discuss their health.
Exactly. It really is a nice option. And we've seen, our patient access has improved significantly since we've started this program, just because we've made it so easy for them.
Who introduces it? And who trains the patient in their home and guides them on the use of the tablet?
Yes, someone does just deliver it and shows them how to operate it. However, it is very, very simple. All it is literally is opening it up and pressing the answer button when the physician calls. So it really is that simple. And in order for patients to access this kind of program, all they need to do is either, number one, call their physician office to find out what their options are to enroll in the program. The other thing they can do is visit wellmedconnect.com.
Okay, doctor, so the patient needs to find a provider with WellMed and call to discuss Tablet Connect.
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you so much, doctor, for joining us this morning with wonderful resources and technology available to older patients with chronic conditions who have a hard time getting out of their home to access better health care.
Thank you so much for having me.
Keeping our body and our spirit fit will help us be more alert to changes in our health. Nutrition is key to healing what affects our health. Self-care and relaxation is vital for a busy body and mind. Share with us your method to self-care for a healthier body and mind at facebook.com/Rose Lee Show and follow us on Instagram at The Rose Lee Show. Watch this episode and many others 24/7 at RoselyArcherShow.com. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we look forward to seeing you soon.